Well, if you have ever experienced loss or heartbreak or crippling grief, you'll know that finding your way to a place of peace can feel impossible at times. And our next guest wants you to know you are not alone. There is a tremendous freedom in forgiveness. And if anyone is qualified to speak on this, it is Wilma Derksen. Derksen's daughter, Candace, was just 13 years old when she was abducted and murdered. That was in 1984. 22 years later, a suspect was charged, convicted. That conviction was then overturned and is currently in the middle of a second trial. So throughout it all, Wilma Derksen has steadfastly pursued forgiveness. And what she has learned, she has put in the pages of this brand new book called The Way of Letting Go. We are honored to have Wilma in our studio this morning. Thanks for coming in to share your story today.
Well, thank you for having me.
First, I want to know, what was it like to write this book, to write down this story, your journey and your loss of Candace?
Oh, it felt cathartic. You know, I felt like finally I could get it, and I think it was at the right time in the right place. I'd never found the words before. So now finally it came together in quite a beautiful way, for me at least.
Imagine a lot of tears.
Oh, yeah. Tears, anger. I do the ram. I have lots of emotion.
Were there lots of sort of writes and rewrites as you wrote something down? I thought, this isn't the part of the forgiveness story.
Well, they gave me 3 months to write it. So I kind of had to hurry through it. But yeah, the rewrites are always there. Yeah, editing and the cutting and the crafting.
Well, let's get into the book. It opens January 17th, 1985. That's the day they found your daughter's body. It was 10 o'clock that night. You receive a visit from a stranger. Who was he? And tell us why that visit was important.
There was a knock on the door, and he just opened. When I opened it, he says, you know, I've come to tell you what to expect. I, too, am a parent of a murdered daughter. And my heart just sank, because then I realized forevermore my identity had changed. I am now a parent of a murdered daughter, still, 33 years later.
And who was this person? How did they know how to find you?
I don't know. Well, we were very high profile at that point because we'd been looking for her for 7 weeks. And so he had experienced, you know, he was familiar to us. And then he told us, and it was really good.
You describe yourself as a reluctant forgiver. Would you say that forgiveness is hard for everybody?
I think so. I think it's always counterintuitive. It's not what we do naturally. You know, the first thing is anger, the first thing is whatever, right, that comes naturally. We're looking after ourselves. Rarely do we move into looking after the situation and other people that quickly.
What was the most difficult part for you to let go of?
My rage.
Why?
I think a broken heart of a mother is just filled with rage. And I think rightly so. I mean, I wouldn't be normal if I wasn't just a mother bear. And it was horrific. It was, but just briefly, I just remember how somebody asked me, okay, would there be equity and what would it look like? And I said, it wouldn't be enough for him to die because he was dying for what he did. Candace was innocent. Mm-hmm. Then I said, 10 child murderers would have to die. And I just chose that word, right, you know, that number right out of the air. And then I said, and I lined them up in my mind's eye. And I saw them sort of being executed, but it wasn't good enough for me. Mm. And I said, I would have to pull the trigger. And I pulled it 10 times. Wow. And it was delicious. I have to admit, it was just, oh, it felt so good. And then I realized, no.
So I want to ask you about that. They're called revenge fantasies. And,
yes.
And you hear them from family members of victims who've been tragically taken. And you say that's a really important piece to let go of, are those revenge fantasies. Because often people can talk about forgiveness, mm-hmm. and they say it in their words, but it's what privately goes on in your mind and in your heart that mm-hmm. can still live.
Totally. And it will reflect on our lifestyle then, you know, because if I have that much anger in me, you know, that the first ball of anger goes towards my husband. But, you know, mm-hmm. we choose who we want to be angry at. Actually, yes. And very often it isn't the offender. It's somebody safe, somebody who's accessible, and maybe somebody that we have a grudge against anyway. So it's usually close to us. So I remember, you know, my husband got it, and then sometimes my children. You know, they would be
They must have been baffled. Why are you angry at us?
Exactly. You know, my daughter came home and she was just walking along and she was alone and she was supposed to come home with somebody because I was so scared. I just ripped her apart when she walked through that door. I traumatized her entirely. And she says, Mom, I was just walking. She didn't realize my fear, my anger, and I just said, oh, I've got to stop this.
And that's my next question. When did you know it was time to let go of that?
Immediately.
But could you let go of it?
No.
There's one thing about knowing it, another thing about doing
Totally.
it. So when did you know that you had let that go?
Oh, I think that comes, you never know. You know, because the cow always comes back. It's
Does
like
it still come
oh
back?
yeah, it's like a weed. Yeah, we're usually angry at least. Normally, we're angry 14 times a day. Something irritates us, but usually we can let people step on our toes. We can let that go. It's the big stuff. It's the real traumas that care.
So you said the anger's still there. So can you be angry and still forgive?
Yes,
How do you do
because
that?
it's a process. I'm a I shouldn't say. I'm a forgiving person. And I'm a letting go person. That's my goal. That's my North Star. Whether I'm there all the time, no, I'm not. I have to go through it, and we're going through a trial right now. And all those emotions come back. So each time it's a new thing because it presents itself in a new way.
Well, this is what I wanted to ask you. It's one thing to feel like there was a conviction and perhaps that portion was put down and then you can progress, but to have it overturned and to now be going through a trial again, do you feel like you're going through the forgiveness process again, or are you further along?
I think we get accustomed to it. When we choose, we get, when you're married, when you're first married, you have to learn how to be married, right? And eventually you learn. So it's probably easier. I probably recognize things better now, hopefully.
Where would you be if you hadn't been able to let go of the anger, to let go of all of the grief, and to be able to move on?
I would be probably a single, angry old woman, older than I am now. Because the first thing isn't about the man. The first thing I had to forgive was sex.
Why?
Because I had all this anger. Well, whenever we went into the mood, all I could think of was my daughter being raped. That's not a turn on. It would have been gone. And 6 weeks into it, I remember I had to let it go. I went, and so that by the time Candace was found, we were intimate again. I didn't let my husband touch me. So, it's not about him often. It's about a lot of stuff. And that's what the book is about. It's about all the little stuff that we have to go through in order to even deal with the big stuff.
Boy, your message to people who are in a place of unforgiveness, where they are heading in that direction where you said you could have been, where you're living, possibly solo, but full of anger and of rage.
Oh.
What would your words be to them today?
Try it. Just try letting it go, just in little baby steps. You can't get there right away. It's in little baby steps. It's every day going through and saying, okay, this is yucky. This is really, really bad. It's not perfect. The world is broken. I'm going to just take it, I'm going to accept it, and I'm going to take it away, and then I'm going to move into shift my eyes to something better. I'm not going to be obsessed with this. I'm going to shift my eyes and go and do something I wouldn't ordinarily do. Just little shifts.
It's a hopeful message because it can seem, we don't like messy in our society, and it can seem very messy to put all of those emotions in front of you and to move to forgiveness.
Yes.
Thank you for your message today and for your book as well.
Oh, thank you.
All right. A reminder, the book is called The Way of Letting Go by Wilma Derksen.